Hey guys, tonight we're heading somewhere warm, dry, and surprisingly serene. Ancient Mesopotamia. The year as well, let's say roughly 1750 BCE, give or take a few dusty centuries. You're not a warrior, a king, or even a merchant today. No, tonight, you are something far more elite in its own quietly thrilling way. You're a Babylonian librarian. Your sandals squish softly in the baked mud of early morning yore, or perhaps Nipper. The sun is just lifting itself above the low horizon, casting sleepy golden light over walls of sun-baked brick. The air still holds the cool breath of night, though it won't last long. You trudge toward the city's scriptorium, past vendors setting up baskets of dates, sheep bleating indignantly in the distance, and children chasing a rolling potsherd like it's the World Cup, the first scent to hit. You isn't ink or parchment, it's clay, warm, damp, and honest. You see, books in Babylon aren't made of paper, but of thick, hand-shaped tablets. Soft enough to press a reed stylus into, but stubborn enough to crack your toe if you drop one. And you will. You always do. Your colleagues are already there. The senior scribe is muttering about a broken stylus. A teenage apprentice yawns so deeply, you can see his breakfast barley.
Ow.
The air hums with gentle monotony. No blinking, no blinking, no Wi-Fi passwords forgotten. Just soft shuffles, and the occasional clunk of a tablet being set just slightly too hard on a shelf. But don't get too comfortable, because let's be honest, you probably wouldn't last a day in this job. The hours are long, the records are heavy. The reed styluses, they splinter. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is over there. Are you falling asleep to the sounds of morning traffic in Manila? Or drifting off under a blanket of snow in Oslo? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You arrive at the temple library, technically called a tablet house, or vudub, ba in Sumerian, still lingering in the lingo. It's not the sprawling marble edifice of a modern fantasy. It's compact, cozy, really. The inner walls are stacked with shelves of clay tablets, square, oval, oblong, and every shade from straw to smoky beige. You slip off your sandals because no one tracks dust into the archives. There are rules. Somewhere, on a chipped tablet near the door, someone long ago etched, "May the one who defiles this room with unclean feet be cursed with poor memory and leaky ink." It's probably a joke. Probably. There's a spot waiting for you by the east wall, near a high window where the morning sun pours in like sleepy molasses. You lower yourself onto a reed mat. This is your desk, your domain, your delicate, clay-scented kingdom. Your first task. Inventory. Again, you go through it daily, because tablets aren't forever. They chip, they flake. The ones written during that week when the stylus supply ran out. They smudge if you blink too hard. Each tablet has a tiny hole punched in one corner with a string threaded through. Not to hang, no. That's just for bundles, legal documents, receipts, even letters to the gods. You sort through yesterday's records, a shipment of barley, a marriage agreement, a list of lunar omens involving sheep with too many legs. Business as usual. Here's your first mainstream historical fact of the night. Babylonian libraries often doubled as schools. Your archive ES&T, just a sleepy collection of receipts and epic poetry also a training ground. You, dear listener, are both a scholar and a babysitter. The apprentices must learn not just how to write, but what's worth writing. A teen walks by, balancing a tray of damp tablets. His tunic is misaligned, his hair full of straw, and his eyes glazed from copying the word goat 75 times in a row. You gently redirect him to the drying rack, because no, you can't just stack wet tablets in a corner and hope for the best. Now for tonight's quirky detail. Librarians in ancient Babylon often left little notes to self-etched onto tablet edges. You come across one now? It reads, "Do not trust tablet from Aradgula." Very messy. A sassy side note baked in forever. Some things never change. Outside the heat rises. Buzzing of flies increases, though a pot of crushed herbs near the window keeps most of them away. You sip water from a clay bowl, your lips gritty with mineral residue. Refreshing in the way only non-filtered well water can be. Back to work. It's not just for fun, it's a kind of holy text and teaching material rolled into one. Your stylus dances across a practice tablet, copying the phrase, When on high the heavens had not been named. You pause. The curve of the character for heaven looks wonky. You fix it, then fix it again. By the third attempt it looks worse, and you consider just inventing a new character for sky and calling it a day. Here is something historians still argue over: whether Babylonian scribes composed these myths as rigid religious doctrine, or if they were allowed to interpret and embellish them like poets. Some tablets show clear variants. Others are exact copies. You suspect the truth is somewhere in between, like when a student copies a poem, but swaps a few words to avoid being accused of plagiarism. As the morning stretches on, a warm drowsiness sets in. You lean back slightly against the cool wall, letting your eyes trace the pattern of baked brick, listening to the scrape of stylus against clay. There's a rhythm to it, like a whispering tide. And for a brief moment, you think this isn't so bad. No emails, no meetings, just the endless looping comfort of dust, ritual, and time. You pick up your next task with a kind of quiet resolve. It's not glamorous. It's not even legible at first glance. But that's the jabu, or a Babylonian librarian, not a bard. Today's clay tablet is dense, rectangular, and strangely damp on one edge. You ignore that part. The topic: a record of barley payments to temple workers, complete with dates, weights, and more names than a high school yearbook. Your stylus taps rhythmically as you skim the rows of wedge-shaped cuneiform signs. This system of writing, the pride of Sumer and Babylon, looks deceptively simple, tiny impressions made with a sharpened reed into soft clay. But the trick lies in the angles. A single misplaced wedge can mean the difference between bowl and taxes. And let us just say mislabeling a royal tribute from for fine cattle to zero paid tribute as ... consequences. The record in front of you mentions a priestess named Ninizan, who apparently received 10 shekels worth of barley and 2 jars of date wine. You smile faintly. You met her once. Fierce eyebrows. Smelled like lavender and disapproval. Then comes something more. It's entertaining. A prayer tablet to Inanna, goddess of love and war, you read aloud. Softly, to you, Inanna, who rides the roaring storm. May my beloved's heart pound like thunder, and his beard grow thick with longing. Well, that escalated quickly. You glance toward the apprentice corner, make sure no one's eavesdropping. These things were personal, private, but also occasionally hilarious. Somewhere between desperate affection and poetic blackmail. It's comforting to know that even 4,000 years ago, people were still awkward about dating. Here's your mainstream fact for this section. The Babylonians preserved not just state decrees and trade agreements, but also literature. Hymns, divination manuals, and yes, deeply emotional love poems. They believed in archiving everything, because even love, like taxes, required documentation. Your task now is to match this prayer tablet with its companion, a clay envelope bearing the sender's name. Clay envelopes, by the way, are exactly what they sound like. Soft slabs wrapped around other slabs, often sealed with a fingernail-sized stamp. It's bureaucracy, but make it adorable. As you sift through a tray of cracked covers, your fingers brush against a tablet that's unusually smooth. You tilt it. Frown. The inscription is faint but clear. Oh, Inanna, make his sandals fall off at the gate. Charming. Quirky tidbit of the section. There's evidence that some scribes made practice tablets for children learning to write, and that they sometimes snuck in jokes or mock assignments. One such clay tablet reads, "The scribe drinks beer and does not come to school." You'd love to find that one. Maybe you'll carve your own tonight just for fun. You pause to stretch your back. Sitting on a reed mat for hours isn't exactly ergonomic. The scriptorium smells of drying clay and faint. Someone's chewing on imported lemon peel, a rare treat. You glance toward the high windows. Sun's climbing now, starting to bake the top bricks until the air shimmers. You know this means clay will dry faster today. Better move your wet documents into shade before they crack. Suddenly a clatter. The teenage apprentice drops a tray. You wince. The prayer tablet survives, but a tax ledger snaps in two. You help him gather the shards, offering a whispered, "It's okay," because what else can you say? A broken tablet is like a broken sentence. Sometimes you can read around the missing pieces. Sometimes you improvise. Here's a bit scholars still argue over. Did the Babylonians invent the idea of archiving for posterity? Or were they simply tracking inventory with religious dedication? Some believe their libraries were sacred spaces repositories, not just of fact, but of cosmic truth. Others argue they were just very organized about barley. As you work, your fingers now dry and dusted white, you realize something. There's a strange peace to this process. Each mark you read is a human voice, whispering across the centuries. Not dramatic, not famous, just human. And then, out of nowhere, a miswritten sign. A wedge turned the wrong way. You blink at it, turns shepherd into sneeze, which makes the sentence, he shall give one sneeze of wool. You almost laugh aloud, almost you log it anyway. You know better than to correct ancient authors. Maybe there was once a wool sneeze tax. You wouldn't be surprised. The hour creeps on, and the light shifts. More scribes enter, carrying clay slabs in baskets like loaves of bread, each one filled with records, receipts, rhymes. You sort, match, shelve. Place the most fragile under slatted sunshades, the newer ones on upper racks. Your fingers ache, your knees crack. But you feel useful. As if every little record you preserve is one less voice lost to time. You pick up a final tablet before break, a rough-hewn thing, slightly crooked. It's a letter scrawled hurriedly. Tell the grain merchant I was robbed by boatmen. Also, the goat died. Also, please send figs. You nod solemnly. A masterpiece. The sun has lifted higher now, painting golden streaks across the earthen walls as you step outside for your mid-morning break. Your sandals crunch softly against the gravel path, warmed but not yet scorched by the encroaching heat. You stretch your arms over your head, vertebrae cracking like dry twigs, satisfying in a way that only a well-earned pause can provide. Outside, the city pulses with the kind of calm chaos only a few millennia of human civilization could perfect. You perch on a low wall near the library entrance, chewing a date from your cloth pouch and observing the living theater of Babylonian life unfold around you. To your left, a pair of traders is shouting about fish prices with the conviction of angry philosophers. One gestures so hard, his copper bracelet flies off and lands in a nearby clay pot. He doesn't notice. You do not tell him. Children scurry past in groups, some barefoot, some trailing bits of reed and string-like half-constructed toys. A goat bleats somewhere behind a stall, and another responds immediately and with outrage. There's a lot of goat-related drama this morning. You sip cool barley water from a wide cup and try to ignore it. Now comes your view of the day, the ziggurat. It towers in the distance, not just a holy structure, but a quiet guardian of the city. The sun glints off its upper terrace, catching bits of gold plating placed there to honor Marduk himself. You've never been all the way to the Toponli priests and the occasional terrified pigeon make that climb, but you admire it nonetheless. Like a mountain someone had the audacity to build from scratch. Here's a mainstream fact worth chewing on. Ziggurats weren't temples in the traditional sense, but platforms for temples. The actual holy spot was at the very top of a place believed to connect the earth to the heavens. Sort of an ancient Mesopotamian Wi-Fi tower, but with more incense. Across the square, a potter struggles with a collapsed kill wall, while three women in dyed linen debate loudly over whether the royal gardener has been stealing temple figs. This has nothing to do with your library duties, of course. But it's nice to see that human pettiness has timeless staying power. You lean back, letting the warm breeze brush your face. And here is something quirky. The elite scribes of your time often had clay amulets tied around their waists. Yours is shaped like a tiny lion with two heads. You were told it brings clarity of mind. Mostly it pokes you when you sit down too fast. You glance around, noticing how different the air feels out here compared to the stillness of the archives. There's a rhythm to it, all shouting vendors, splashing from a well, the occasional clatter of dropped bronze tools. You take another bite of date and let your eyes scan the skyline. Suddenly, a quiet voice beside you. Do you know where the sun tablets are? It's the apprentice again. It's always appearing when you're mid-bite. You wipe your hands on your tunic and shake your head. Try shelf 4 right behind the omen jars, you say, and he runs off like he's chasing a comet. Now, a debate still circling among historians. Did ancient Babylonian society truly embrace literacy as widespread? Or was it confined to elite scribes like yourself? The answer is murky. While many boys trained in the Agub, Ba, or Tablet House, Actual fluency in cuneiform was rare and jealously guarded. You are among the literate few, and it shows every time someone panics at the sight of a crooked wedge. With your break winding down, you find yourself watching an old man paint protective symbols onto his doorframe using ash and honey. He hums tunelessly, oblivious to the goats now investigating his basket of leeks. One goat makes a move. The man hisses like a cat. You decide not to get involved. You sigh, standing and brushing dust from your knees. The clay underfoot is beginning to bake, and the library beckons with its dark, cool silence. You adjust your sash, tighten your sandal strap, and re-enter the scriptorium like a monk returning to prayer. Back inside, the air feels heavy but welcome. You slide open a wicker curtain to let in more light, revealing a previously unnoticed spiderweb, complete with resident spider, fat and unbothered. You consider naming it. Maybe something Sumerian, like Zubi. It feels right. You settle again at your station, refreshed, only slightly sticky from the dates. Your next task will involve organizing one of the temple's seasonal almanacs. Clay tablets that dictate everything from when to plant barley to when not to sneeze near livestock. But for now, you allow yourself one more quiet moment. And in that moment, you think, being a librarian in ancient Babylon isn't thrilling. But it is stable, oddly meditative, and most importantly peaceful. Until the goat from earlier bursts in through the outer curtain, followed closely by 3 shouting children and a beet-colored priest with a staff. You blink, you sigh, you reach for your stylus. Just another normal day at the world's first library. The goat incident is blessedly handled. Within a few minutes, a single stern look from the temple guard, and the children scatter like startled sparrows, dragging the goat by a frayed rope that seems more symbolic than functional. The priest huffs, adjusts his robes, and mutters something about portents of the month of Tammuz. You pretend not to hear? Back in the scriptorium, things settle again into their usual rhythm. You step onto the creaky wooden ladder, leaned against the archive wall, a device, more optimistic than stable, and begin your next chore. Reorganizing the shelves. Not shelves in the sense we know them today, mind you. These are shallow clay cubbies embedded into the mud brick walls like honeycombs for very flat bees. Each compartment houses dozens of tablets, some labeled with neat inscriptions, others blank, broken, or enigmatic. You mutter softly as you climb, your lion-headed amulet bumping rhythmically against your belt. You're searching for a specific bundle, a series of incantations dealing with toothaches, snake bites, and dream-born fevers. You find them tucked behind a stack of Omen Texan, another lazy apprentice shortcut. You'll have words later. For now, you remove the top tablet and read. If a man dreams of a river drying, he will lose his barley. Well, that's one way to ruin a nap. Here is our mainstream historical fact of the day. Babylonian libraries didn't just preserve administrative records. They also stored extensive medical texts. These included herbal remedies, incantations, and diagnostic lists so comprehensive they might have given modern physicians some ideas. The line between medicine and magic was fluid, and often you prescribe both a poultice and a spell, just to be safe. You stack the tablets gently, but one catches your eye. It's newer, the clay smoother, the script oddly formal. It's part of the series of The Exorcist, a grand name for a collection of magical rituals dealing with everything from fevers to evil breath. One tablet reads, "If the patient smells sulfur and hears whispers in the wall, sprinkle cedar oil and chant the hymn to Ninasina." You can't help but smirk. Whispering walls. It's probably just damp clay expanding. Or worse, your apprentice practicing flute again in the archives. Now, for your quirky tidbit. Among the tablets are several entries on frog-based medicine. Apparently, boiling the right frog on the correct moon phase and applying the paste to one's temples was believed to help with insomnia. You once saw a scribe try it. He just ended up with a rash and a very offended frog. The ladder wobbles slightly, reminding you that your current height is not ideal for heavy lifting. You shift your weight, clutching the tablet bundle to your chest, and slowly descend. Each creak is a gentle threat from gravity. You whisper to the ladder as if soothing a stubborn donkey. Once on the ground, you carry the bundle to the central reading mat. Here on a wide read platform, the more delicate or confusing texts are laid out for review. You arrange them carefully, squinting at the tiny corner notes clay marginalia, if you will. One of the prayer tablets has a fingerprint baked into it, not yours. The hand of the original writer. You rest your thumb next to it. The grooves line up almost. It's a quiet, intimate moment. You are literally touching history, not metaphorically. Someone thousands of years ago pressed their thumb here, and now so do you. When here's a point historians still debate. Were these libraries truly public? Some scholars argue they were open to temple scribes and nobles only. Others believe certain areas may have been accessible to lay people, at least under supervision. No clear answer has emerged. It's mostly because the ancient Babylonians didn't leave a handy FAC section chiseled into the wall. As you work, a soft rustling catches your ear. You look up. A temple assistant is carrying in a new batch of documents from the outer precincts, mostly economic tablets from the barley granaries. You nod in greeting, then quickly regret it, because she takes this as an invitation to speak. They want these shelved by mid-afternoon, she says flatly, dumping a basket near your mat. You smile with the warmth of a damp sandal and return to your work. The tablets smell faintly of hay and sun. They refresh soft enough that you else have to leave them in the drying room for now. And of course, one of them already has a corner chipped off. You record it anyway. You slide a few tablets back into their clay niches. Stepping around the apprentices' discarded stylus, the one with the flattened tip that writes like a clumsy duck, you've told him 100 times to carve a fresh one. You even left him a warning on his practice tablet last week. Stylus dull equals fingers cursed. He thought it was funny. He was wrong. As the afternoon stretches forward, the light shifts once more, revealing a small mosaic tucked into the corner wall. You never noticed it before? Bits of blue and white stone form a crude bull's head, maybe a guardian symbol, maybe a bored artisan's side project. Either way, you nod at it respectfully, just in case. You finish this session by returning the final stack of tablets to the shelf. As your fingertips press them into place, you whisper the traditional scribe's blessing. May the gods of the tablet remember my hand kindly. The wall doesn't respond, of course. But you think the little bull in the mosaic winks. You don't even get a chance to sit down again before the next disturbance arrives. Footsteps. Hurried and too loud, echoing through the corridor, like someone trying not to be important, while being very obviously important. It's the king's vizier. He appears in the doorway like a dust storm in a silk robe tall. It's thin and perpetually frowning, as if someone once told him smiling was illegal. A pair of guards looms behind him, bored but heavily armed. You straighten your spine. He doesn't even look at you at first. Viziers never start with the librarian, and he clears his throat unnecessarily. You, he says, not cruelly, not warmly, just administratively. You nod. Yes, honored vizier. There was a treaty, he says, tapping the air as if conjuring it, between our king and the city of Ishnana, sealed in the reign of Hammurabi's predecessor. It includes certain provisions. Find it, you blink. Of course, may I ask before sundown? Then he's gone. You turn slowly back toward the shelves, hands on your hips. Of course, a lost treaty. In a collection of 10,000 nearly identical clay rectangles, many labeled helpfully as agricultural surplus, miscellaneous. Here, your mainstream fact for this section. Babylonian libraries were not organized by a universal classification system. No decimal codes, no tidy little labels. Instead, they were sorted by category, scribe, or sometimes just whoever shelved them last, which in this case was probably you. Hey, you suppress a groan. You start in the legal archive, the room of disputes, as it's sometimes called. Here the tablets are older, heavier, and more brittle. You lift them with the care of someone holding sleeping kittens made of glass. The air is cooler here, slightly damp. A perfect climate for mold, which is exactly why you keep a dish of burnt cedar chips smoldering nearby. Makes the tablets smell like an autumn campfire and keeps the mildew at bay. As you sift through shelves, you notice one tablet tagged with a symbol you haven't seen in months, a scratched triangle over a barley stalk. That was the old archivist's mark. He was eccentric, believed barley was the secret to universal categorization. You'd think he might have been onto something? Quirky detail of the day. Some scribes marked important tablets with dog's teeth. Little incised triangles meant to stand out, like ancient post-it flags. But sometimes, these were just doodles or signs of boredom. You once spent an hour trying to decode a series of marks that turned out to be a game of tic-tac-toe. You lost. You drag a low stool over and start pulling out bundles. One reads, "Concerning the division of temple property in Nipper." Not at another, "List of goats not returned." Also not it, though, possibly a scandal. You pause at agreement regarding the canal of Enlil's mercy. Closer, you read the first line. "If the waters flow ungoverned, may crops drown and debts rise like smoke." Very dramatic. Still not it. Here is where historians still debate the matter. Was Hammurabi's famed code actually used as law in daily practice, or was it more of a political statement propaganda carved in stone? The actual administrative records, like the one you're hunting, suggest that real legal proceedings were messier, more localized, and incredibly detailed, which from your perspective means harder to find. You keep digging. Some tablets are wrapped in clay envelopes still unbroken. You're tempted, but breaking an old seal is a bureaucratic nightmare unless you're absolutely sure. You mark one with a red die string. A note for tomorrow. Hours pass. Light slants across the library walls. Your shadow grows longer. And then there it is. A tablet thicker than the rest, its edge bearing a faded symbol, a half-sun over 2 lines. You remember that mark? It's the royal insignia from the reign of Sin-Mabalit, Hammurabi's father. You wipe the surface gently with a soft cloth soaked in olive oil and ash, revealing the opening inscription, "Let it be known that Ishnana and Babylon, under witness of Shamash, agree." You exhale. Treaty found. Now, of course, it must be verified, logged, and presented with the appropriate clay cover note, plus a stamp from the temple sealmaster, all before sundown. You stand up slowly, knees popping like hot coals, cross the archive floor, clutching the treaty as if it might evaporate, and lay it gently on the central desk. There's a weight to it, not just physical, political, historical. In this moment, you are the quiet hinge of empire. It's no fanfare, no heralds, just you and a very old piece of dirt. As you prepare the clay envelope, your apprentice peeks in, wide-eyed. "Is that important?" You nod. "Yes." "Should I breathe near it?" "Absolutely not." He vanishes. You smooth the seal clay, press your stamp into its face, and place the completed packet on a reed tray. You ring the tiny bronze chime that signals item ready for courier. Somewhere outside, a temple runner will be dispatched. Your part is done. You sit down, you breathe. The vizier will never thank you, but Babylon will remember. Your legs are still a little sore from all the ladder climbing, but there's no time to rest. The sun has dipped a bit lower in the sky, casting amber shadows through the high window slats. That means it's apprentice hour, also known as the daily test of your patience. You're greeted at your mat by the unmistakable sound of groaning. Not physical pain, just emotional. Dramatic, long, drawn-out groaning, like a herd of oxen, realizing they've circled the same field 3 times. You don't even need to look up to know the source. Your apprentice, Shanutu, is sprawled on the floor, his face planted firmly in a practice tablet. "I can't," he mumbles, voice muffled by clay. You sigh. "Can't what?" "Can't tell if this says cow or curse. They look exactly the same." You lean over his shoulder, squinting at the wedge clusters. He's right. It's ambiguous. You poke the corner of the tablet with your stylus. It says cow. If it were curse, the second wedge would slant more. But how can you tell? Because the farmer who wrote it also doodled a cow in the margin. There it is, tiny, wonky, unmistakably bovine. You try not to smile. Here's our mainstream historical fact for today. Babylonian scribes used over 600 different cuneiform signs. Some were phonetic, others symbolic, and many were used interchangeably, depending on the era, region, and whether the scribe had had their breakfast. It's part of what makes deciphering these tablets today such a headache for scholars, and a goldmine of charming inconsistencies. You watch as Shanutu struggles to copy a line from a clay diary. Not a king's journal, mind you. This one belonged to a temple groundskeeper who seemed particularly angry at his fig tree. "The figs will not ripen. I suspect sabotage." You arch an eyebrow. "That's not how fig trees work." Shanutu shrugs. He also blamed his neighbor's dog for sour beer. Quirky tidbit. Some ancient personal tablets included not only daily complaints, but passive-aggressive accusations. You've read ones that say things like, "My brother says he pays taxes. Oh, this is untrue." Or the memorable classic, "Do not trust Zuzu. He borrowed sandals and never returned them." You help Shinutu shape a fresh stylus. He whittles the reed slowly, muttering to himself. You gently redirect his thumb. "The angle is wrong. Like this, you say. The wedge should press in cleanly. It's not a fight. You're encouraging the clay, not scolding it." He nods, then promptly snaps the reed in half. You blink. He blinks. You hand him another one without a word. You glance up at the far corner of the room, where another apprentice is trying and failing not to cry over a broken tablet. Call out gently, "Was it something sacred?" Sniffle, "No, just the goat census, then we'll survive." We walk over to inspect the damage. The tablet is cracked diagonally, but not shattered. You show the apprentice how to use a bit of damp clay to glue the pieces together and then wrap it loosely in linen for drying. Meanwhile, a nearby shelf trembles. You freeze. "Snake," someone whispers. And yes, there it is. A thin, dusky green slither poking from behind the tablet stacks. Probably harmless. Hopefully harmless. You grab a broom and nudge it gently. It flicks its tongue, unimpressed. You shoo it out the window, where it disappears into the reeds like a bad mood slipping out the door. Here is something historians still argue over, whether these tablet houses had formal pest control systems or just a lot of cats. The evidence is inconclusive, but between the snakes, rodents, and insects, you sometimes wonder if the archive is more alive than the texts it guards. You return to your mat and find Shinutu staring at a phrase he's just written. Does this say harvest moon or burnt fish? You look harvest moon, but not by much. Language is stupid. Language is ancient, you say, stretching your back. Stupidity is just part of the charm. The light grows warmer, softer. You light a small oil lamp, the flame flickering faintly in the draft. Around you, the apprentices settle back into murmured frustration and quiet determination. You take up your own stylus again, beginning to transcribe a list of temple donations: goats, barley, wine, more goats, some sandalwood, and of course a goose. A very angry-looking goose, if the margin drawing is to be believed. You pause to reflect on the day's efforts. The broken ledger, the snake, the never-ending goat-related drama. And now, a stylus that seems determined to split every wedge in two. And yet, you feel oddly calm. There's a rhythm to this madness, a purpose in the repetition. You don't need a scepter or a chariot. You have your stylus, your clay, your catalog of curses and cows. In the end, that's all a Babylonian librarian really needs. The lamp flickers low, casting long shadows over the tablet racks. Evening has begun its slow descent, and with it comes a different energy, quieter, weightier. The apprentices have gone home, dismissed after cleaning their mats and misplacing half their tools. You're alone now, except for the beetle currently crawling across your inkstone with an air of quiet authority. You gently flick it away. Outside, the city exhales. The sound of traders fades, replaced by distant drums from the temple and the low hum of evening prayers. You can just make out the voice of a priest chanting to Ishtar, the goddess of love and war. Her dual nature reflected in every verse, sweetness edged with steel. Stretch your arms, fingers stiff from the day's stylus grip. The reed tips get blunter faster than you'd like. You make a mental note. Fresh reeds tomorrow. Maybe pick the thinner stalks from the canals. Edge the fat ones, wobble on delicate curves. Your next task isn't glamorous, but it's necessary. It's the night inventory, a full sweep of what's been written, restored, returned, or tragically dropped. You begin at the south wall, lighting an extra lamp. The walls here are packed with administrative tablets, mostly grain records, labor lists, temple contracts. Here's your mainstream fact of the night. Babylonian scribes not only wrote new documents, but also meticulously maintained and recopied old ones. Clay erodes. Letters fade. Whole libraries were preserved not by the stone, but by the habit of recopying the same text over generations, like monks in clay. You notice a tablet you haven't seen in months. It's smaller than most, its surface worn smooth by time. It's It's the title etched at the top. Table of Night Stars. You pause. It's not technically library material. It's a temple star chart used for divination. A list of stars, their names, their meanings. You run your fingers over the signs. When the dog star rises, beware of liars. When the scorpion shines, speak only truth. When Orion stands tall, the sea is kind. You can almost hear the chant that accompanied these words. You hum it softly off-key. The melody is older than even the script. It was likely whispered on rooftops, fingers pointed skyward, predictions made with more confidence than accuracy. Here's your quirky tidbit. Babylonian astrologers sometimes recorded their own doubts directly into the tablets. One particularly honest note you recall read, "The omen is unclear, probably Saturn or a bird." You shelve the star tablet in its proper place, next to a mismatched bundle of omen scrolls and a heavy dictionary of cuneiform signs with inked illustrations. Someone clearly had fun with that. There's a doodle of a scribe fighting a lion using only a stylus. Historically inaccurate, but aspirational. Next, you move to the damaged collection. These are the limping tablets, the chipped, cracked, or illegible pieces, awaiting repair or rewriting. You handle them with care, placing each one onto the padded reed mat like tiny ancient patients in a clay hospital. One is a copy of the Epic of Gilgamesh, broken clean across the line about the cedar forest. You read it aloud anyway. He who would pass the gates must first silence his fear. You whisper it again, softer. The room responds with silence. Only the oil lamp sputters slightly, as if sighing in agreement. And now, the debate historians still argue about. Was Gilgamesh a real king, or purely myth? The tablets are inconsistent. Some inscriptions mention a king of Uruk with that name. Others speak only of the legend, his strength, his rage, his journey to the underworld. Maybe he was both. Maybe all kings are, eventually. You sit with the broken Gilgamesh tablet a moment longer before returning it to its waiting basket. Tomorrow, perhaps you'll copy it again. Let his story live a little longer. You're crossed to the eastern wall where the epic poems live. These are the luxury tablets carved deeper, more stylized. A few are even inlaid with mineral paints, a rare treat. The Lament for Yor, the Descent of Inanna, the Hymn to Dumusid. You pass your hand over them like spines on a bookshelf. You pull out one at random. Dumusid dreams of cold reeds and silver rain. He waits beneath the hill. Beautiful. And also terribly vague. You remember studying this as a young scribe, trying to parse the metaphors? Your mentor had shrugged. Poets drink too much date wine, he'd said. Ignore the silver rain. Check the back of the tablet for a catalog number. It's missing. Not ideal. You'll fix that later. You'll light the last of your lamps, placing it near the entrance, where its glow can reach the floor tiles. The mosaic bowl is still there, half grinning. You nod to it, feeling just a little silly. The night inventory nears completion. You tally the new additions. 3 prayers, 2 contracts, 1 map of a goat pen that appears to have been revised 4 times. You're not even going to ask. Your stylus hand is cramping again. You rub it against your tunic, knuckles stiff, thumb sore. This is the part of the evening where you wish for something decadent like warm water and a chair with a back. Instead, you get a breeze. It slips in through the high window, just enough to stir the edge of your linen sleeve. You close your eyes, breathe it in dry, sweet, with just a trace of fig blossom. A sound in the distant stemple, drums again, slower this time. Evening offerings, incense lit. 1,000 whispered hopes rising with the smoke. You wonder how many of those prayers ever reach the gods. Probably not many. But if someone writes them down, maybe that helps. That's what you're doing, after all. Just recording facts. You're remembering people who might otherwise vanish like shadows at dawn. And tonight, with the stars beginning to prick the sky outside, you feel like one small part of something timeless, ancient, sacred. You blow out the first lamp. The lamp flames dim one by one, replaced by the deeper hush of true night. You leave the final light glowing near the central mat, where one last task waits for your attention: a box of personal letters. Recently returned from the temple's messenger hall, most are still sealed in clay envelopes, their surfaces inscribed with names, titles, and the occasional half-smudged urgent. Personal correspondence isn't your favorite part of the job. It's often messy, emotional, and full of questionable grammar. But you understand its importance. These aren't grand declarations or laws carved in stone. These are people trying to be remembered, trying not to disappear. Crack open the first envelope carefully, using a flat bronze blade. Inside, a letter from a merchant's wife to her brother, who apparently forgot her birthday. Twice you said you would send linen. You sent dried fish. I am insulted, and the dog agrees. You snort softly, a masterpiece. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Many of the personal letters from Mesopotamia were written by women. Contrary to modern assumptions, literate women, especially priestesses and wives of merchants, fonded on matters of business, family, and even legal disputes. Their voices echo clearly, full of wit, worry, and sarcasm. You sort the letters into categories: family feuds, property squabbles, love declarations, and mysterious notes labeled simply "do not read aloud." That one you set aside. It's probably best not to anger whatever spirit is involved. Your fingers are covered in fine clay dust again, coating your hands like pale gloves. You wipe them on a linen cloth, then unseal the next letter, a note from a scribe in Uruk, asking for a transfer to Babylon. Your library has more shade, your figs are sweeter, and your supervisor's less cruel. Flattery will get you far. Quirky tidbit. Some scribes included tiny clay attachments with their letters' amusements, like miniature dice, joke tablets, or charms shaped like ears and eyes. One such charm was meant to say, "I hear you, I see you." Another, less kindly, resembled a donkey's rear. You find one now, nestled in the box, tiny clay fish, with patience scratched across its side. The letter it came with is unsigned, mysterious, possibly cursed. You give it a respectful nod and place it in the unknown drawer. By now the silence has thickened, not empty, but full with distant footfalls. The creak of beams, a soft chirp from some night insect outside. You're not alone, but the world has shrunk to just you, this mat. And the heartbeat rhythm of organizing lives one tablet at a time. You open another clay envelope and pull out a tightly written message. It begins with no greeting. Do you remember the fig grove near the Southern Canal? Do you remember how we used to run there after lessons? You pause. This isn't an official letter. It's a memory. A shared secret folded into clay. No signature, no return address, just the ache of someone trying to reach across time. You reread it, then return it gently to its envelope. Some things aren't meant to be filed. You place it in the return to temple tray. Historians still argue whether these personal archives were curated or merely collected. Did scribes decide what to keep based on importance, or did they, like you, simply find themselves too attached to certain lines to let them fade? There's no definitive answer, only guesswork and gut instinct. You stand now, stretching your back with a crack that echoes slightly in the quiet. Your belly growls, but there's no food until morning. Maybe you'll have a honey cake from the market, if the bakers didn't tea-burn them again. Last week, one had so much ash in it, you nearly cataloged it as a construction sample. One final letter remains. It's delicate Tolder clay, rougher etching. The language is Akkadian, formal and stiff. You translate slowly. To the keeper of words, may you never forget my name. May my voice last beyond my breath. You hold the letter in your palm, its weight strangely comforting. That, you think, is what this job really is. You're not just shelving tablets, you're shelving people. Their hopes, their anger, their jokes about goats, their dreams about figs and starlight. You are the bridge between their world and now. You slide the letter into a special drawer marked Voices, your own label. The others pretend not to notice it. But every now and then, you see them add a letter of their own. You extinguish the last lamp. Only moonlight remains, casting pale ribbons across the clay-strewn floor. The night is thick with memory. Before you leave, you whisper softly, "I remember your name." Just in case someone is listening. The library is dark now, lit only by the pale glow of moonlight and the slow breath of silence. You could go home, but you don't. Not yet. You've grown fond of these late hours, when the tablets whisper louder and the city finally exhales its noise. Instead, you pad softly across the clay floor and climb the short stairs to the rooftop, flat and wide. With just enough space to lie down and pretend the stars are letters waiting to be read, You pass the rooftop shrine on your way, a tiny alcove with a suit-darkened figure of Nabu, god of scribes and wisdom. You nod to him in passing. You lie down on a reed mat someone else left behind, probably the junior archivist who comes up here to nap under the pretense of contemplation. The mat smells faintly of sun and sandals. You adjust your sash and rest your arms behind your head. Above you, the stars, clear and sharp tonight. The sky over Babylon is immense, like someone stretched blue silk across the heavens and poked holes in it for fun. You let your mind drift. Here's your mainstream historical fact of the night. The Babylonians were among the first to chart the movement of planets with astonishing accuracy. They could predict eclipses, track Venus, and even assign omens to the dance of stars. Astronomy and astrology were one and the same science wrapped in poetry. Somewhere in the archives below, you know there's a tablet describing this very sky. Likely it says something like, when Jupiter stands in the Ox constellation, the river will flood. You don't know if that's true. But you like imagining someone long ago, climbing up here just like you, hoping the stars would whisper answers. A breeze brushes your cheek. Cool. Dry. The kind that carries sand and secrets. Sit up slowly, bones protesting like old friends. You glance toward the ziggurat in the distance. By moonlight, it looks less imposing, more like a sleeping giant wrapped in stone. They say the gods descend there at night, walking its many terraces, to survey the city. Quirky detail. There is a persistent story among scribes that the ziggurat groans when no one's slicking. You've never heard it. But you have noticed that the pigeons refuse to roost on the third terrace. Suspicious, perhaps. Back inside the library, you light a small travel lamp and begin the quiet inventory. This is the one you do just for yourself. Not part of temple orders, not something the vizier will ever care about. Just your way of checking the soul of the place. You visit each corner, each stack. You note which bundles are drying nicely, which ones need rewiring. You press your hand gently to the bricks near the incense niche. Still warm, still safe. You whisper to the broken tablets, the misfiled curses, the half-transcribed market inventories. I see you. I'll get to you soon. You're something historians still argue over. How much personal autonomy did scribes actually have? Were they functionaries? Tools of the temple? Were they closer to philosophers, curators of cultural memory, with leeway to decide what mattered? You, for one, prefer the second theory. You make your way to the Dream Archives, a strange little room near the back, filled with tablets bearing the anxieties of hundreds. Priests often record dreams here for interpretation. Some are divine visions. Most are stress, one says. I dreamed of a donkey walking on two legs, reciting taxes. Another, I saw my father in the river. He offered me onions. You run your hand across the shelf, sighing. Classic onion dream. There's one tablet out of place left on the floor by accident. You pick it up. It reads, I dreamed of falling stars, and a voice that said, remember. You pause. You carry it back to the mat and sit cross-legged, letting the lamp flicker beside you. You copy the dream onto a fresh tablet. Not because you have to, because it feels right. And as your stylus taps the clay in soft rhythm, think, how strange it is to record someone's forgotten night thoughts in a language only a few will ever read again. You don't write your name. But you do leave a mark, a tiny lion, pressed gently in the corner. It's enough. You return the original to its shelf and place your copy in the tray marked supplemental. It'll probably sit there for months, maybe years, but it's there. It exists, and that's what matters. You sit for a moment longer, listening to the night shift sounds of the building expanding walls, faint creaks, the occasional rustle of something living in the rafters. You don't mind? The library is never fully still. Then you whisper the words you always say. Just before the final light is dimmed, may the words sleep but never vanish. And for a moment, in the hush that follows, it feels like they whisper back. Morning returns slowly, slipping like honey across the edges of the city. You don't wake so much as drift upward into awareness, still wrapped in your robe and the smell of clay dust. You never made it home last night. Again, your back protests as you sit up from the reed mat near the window. Your neck makes a sound like snapping barley. A new day, new set of headaches. Before the apprentices arrive, no doubt late, loud and covered in goat fur, you decide to take advantage of the quiet. Cross the main hall barefoot, enjoying the cool of the floor tiles against your skin. There's something almost sacred about the hush before the chaos. Make a small cup of barley tea using the brazier in the corner. It tastes like regret and slightly burnt optimism, but it does the job. Your first task is one you've been putting off for weeks: recataloguing the miscellaneous bin. Ah, the joys of every librarian's nightmare. Pile of tablets labeled only with vague phrases like list of things. It's that one receipt and your personal favorite, that thing. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Ancient Babylonian libraries included a wide range of document types receipts. Legal decisions, hymns, treaties, spells, school exercises, and even math problems. Many ended up lumped together if no one knew where else to put them. You open the bin. The first tablet is indeed a receipt for 3 jars of date wine paid in sheep, standard fare. The second, a school exercise, scrawled by a novice hand. It reads, "I will not gossip in class," repeated 30 times. Apparently, someone learned a valuable lesson. The third tablet is ... Odd, it's shaped differently, more oval, and features a series of what look like recipes you read aloud amused. Take lentils, mash with salt, boil under moonlight, add onion when Venus rises. You blink. Is it a stew or a spell? Perhaps both. This brings us to your quirky tidbit. Babylonian cooking instructions were often tangled with magical beliefs. Certain foods had to be prepared at specific lunar phases or while facing particular temple directions. One recipe you've seen ended with, "If he smiles after eating, the gods are pleased." You set the recipe spell aside. Maybe the kitchen archivist will know what to do with it, or maybe it goes straight to the mystery shelf. Either way, not your problem anymore. You shift the pile, something hard and strangely shaped rolls free. Not a tabletan object, a clay figure no taller than your thumb. A tiny seated man, eyes closed, mouth open, a snoring charm. You chuckle. You haven't seen one of these in years. They were popular talismans placed near beds, said to absorb nightmares and excessive snoring. This one is well worn. You set him gently on your shelf beside your inkstone. He looks like he belongs there. On you dig further, you uncover what at first seems to be a collection of mathematical tablets. Multiplication tables, area formulas, volume calculations for granaries. You hum softly as you scan the numbers. But then, something's off. One of the tablets lists a series of increasingly improbable problems. If 10 men carry 10 jars across 10 hills, and the wind steals 1 jar per hill, how many jars reach the river? A prank. You recognize the hand its old archivist Balishkan's work? He loved slipping fake math problems into student stacks. One apprentice once spent a week trying to solve a problem that involved calculating the volume of a king's ego. The answer was, predictably, infinite. You sort through a few more tablets, some cracked, some warped, and notice one that catches your breath. It's wrapped in old linen, sealed with a symbol you haven't seen in a long time. A stylized star above a twisted rope. The symbol of your first teacher. You unfold the cloth gently. Inside, a meditation tablet. Not rare, but personal. It reads, "To write is to breathe twice. Once into the world, once into yourself." You stare at it, heart full of something quiet and heavy. You press your thumb gently to the surface, then rewrap it, returning it to a clean cloth, and place it inside the inner drawer labeled Mentors. You take a deep breath, eyes scanning the rest of the mess. More receipts, more puzzles. We want to wager more well your end on we gonna go am of we gonna wail we war way I grew and we One half-finished poem about a lion and a merchant that you vaguely recall giving up on midline. Historians still argue whether these miscellaneous bins were intentional, or just the result of overwhelmed scribes running out of categories. But as you look at this pile, you wonder, maybe they knew exactly what they were doing. Maybe not everything needs to be sorted. Maybe some chaos belongs. You stretch again. The sun has fully risen now. You hear the gate creak open. Apprentice feet shuffle in. A sneeze. A crash. Someone dropped the stylus pot again. A voice shouts. And just like that, the day begins. But for one golden hour, before the world woke, it was just you, the stars, and the forgotten pieces of 1,000 quiet lives. And a snoring charm watching it all. Chaos descends with the apprentices like a sack of dropped bricks. Shinutu trips over a stool before he even reaches his mat. Another apprentice you think his name is Kadashman. But honestly, you Haven Tea checked in a few moons drops, an entire tray of styluses onto. The floor with the musical clatter of despair. You close your eyes and sigh deeply, as if inhaling patience through your ears. Let's try not to destroy the city before breakfast, you murmur, sipping your barley tea. They scramble into position, each one pretending they weren't the last one through the door. You can tell by the sheen of panic sweat on their foreheads that something is wrong. Shinutu starts, holding a cracked tablet in both hands. We have a bit of a situation. Of course you do. He hands it over, and you recognize the seal immediately. The Merchants Guild. The tablet itself is a rental record for goats, 6 bolts of linen, and a ceremonial mask lent to a temple on the new moon. It's snapped clean in two. Dropped it, he says sheepishly, while sneezing. A classic. Here, your mainstream historical fact for the day. Babylonian tablets were sometimes created with perforated lines or breakpoints. To allow for transport in smaller pieces, like a protofoldable document, but many more were just awkward, heavy slabs of clay with no forgiveness built in. Drop one, and history shatters. You examine the fracture. It's clean, mendable. Get the repair mat, you say.
They do.
Nearly tripping again in their haste. You lay the 2 pieces flat on a bed of warm sand and brush the break line with damp clay slurry. You press gently until the fracture seals, then bind it in linen strips like a tiny bureaucratic mummy. It'll set by evening, assuming no one breathes on it wrong. Let's all pretend this never happened, you say, glaring at the whole room. Already forgetting, Shinutu mutters. Now comes the day's major project, copying the grain census from a neighboring city. The temple has received a shipment of nearly 400 new tablets. Each one a marvel of barely legible panic script, written by overworked scribes from Sipper. Your job makes sense of it. You assign sections to each apprentice. Shinutu gets livestock. Kadashman gets barley. Quiet girl named Enat takes the loan records. You're not sure where she came from, but she hasn't caused a disaster yet, which makes her your current favorite. Warehouse number 3 reports goat intrusion. To Amphory lost. You pause, tilting your head. Goat intrusion? Goats get everywhere, Enat says without looking up. She's probably right. Quirky tidbit of the day. Mesopotamian warehouses were notorious for strange inventory losses. One famous case involved an entire shipment of sesame oil that supposedly evaporated overnight, which was later attributed to neighbor interference. Polite way of saying someone got greedy. You're halfway through a tablet detailing the measurements of grain baskets when you notice something odd. Kadashman, are you writing numbers in base 10? He looks up, horrified. I might be. You set your stylus down with dramatic flair. We're not Egyptians. Babylonians, as any self-respecting insomniac historian will tell you, used a base 60 system sexagesimal. Not because they enjoyed suffering, but because it made division cleaner. 60 divides neatly into more numbers than 10, which means fewer headaches when calculating. Say how many goats can be traded for 12.5 jars of beer. You demonstrate carefully re-etching a passage with the correct place value system. The others watch, trying and failing to look like they understand. Remember, you say 1 vertical wedge is 1, a small corner wedge is 10, and crying is permitted after noon. They nod solemnly. Here's something historians still debate. Was the sexagesimal system widely understood by the general populace? Or was it mainly the domain of elite scribes and temple accountants? Evidence points both ways. What you do know is that your apprentices are clearly not in the elite category just yet. As the sun climbs higher, the stone walls begin to radiate heat. You unseal one of the cedar oil jars and smear a little on the exposed bricks. It helps keep the clay moist and makes the library smell faintly like a very tired forest. Lunch arrives on a reed, trade-dried dates, barley cakes, and something that might once have been a fig. You eat with one hand, still writing with the other. Shinutu accidentally eats part of a wax seal and spends the next 5 minutes chewing with suspicion. "I thought it was candy," he mumbles. "You thought it was black, bitter candy shaped like a royal emblem, maybe?" The hours stretch. The apprentices mumble, scribble, squint. Kadashman knocks over the ink jar. Enoch copies silently, methodically, like someone who has known true chaos and decided to outstare it. You are about to declare an early finish when you hear a small cough behind you. A temple courier stands in the doorway. In his hands is a sealed tablet marked with the royal crest. Uh-oh. He places it gently before you, bows, and vanishes with the efficiency of someone who wants absolutely no part in whatever's inside. You read it? It's from the vizier. "Royal delegation arrives tomorrow. They request a demonstration of your indexing system." You stare at the words. Then you turn to your team of dusty, ink-stained chaos goblins. "Good news," you say. "We're cleaning." Groans rise in unison, but deep down, even as the dread begins to build, do you feel it again? That strange satisfaction, that sense of being the keeper of something vital, ancient, quietly powerful. You hold up your stylus like a battle standard. Let the scrolls be sorted. You wake up before dawn the next morning, not because you're well rested, but because the anxiety sat on your chest all night like a cat made of stress. Today is the day, the royal delegation. You swing your feet onto the cold floor tiles and mutter something unprintable under your breath. The oil lamp on your desk flickers to life with a sputter. You rub your eyes and start mentally reviewing every corner of the library you neglected to clean yesterday, which is all of them. The apprentices arrive early, which is suspicious. Shinutu carries a broom like it might attack him at any moment. Kadashman is sweeping with the wrong end. Nod is already reorganizing the loose goat incident shelf, muttering about cross-referencing with hoof damage reports. You assign tasks with military precision. You sweep. You fix that leaning archive stack. You stop eating the inventory tags. "I'm tasting for ink quality." Shinutu protests, mouthful of barley paste. "That tag went in a clay pit last week." KU. Here's your mainstream historical fact for the morning. Babylonian libraries were highly respected institutions, especially among elite classes. While not all citizens were literate, the educated elite, including priests, administrators, and yes, royal delegates valued scribes for preserving cultural memory and legitimizing power through records. A single demonstration could decide your funding for the next 5 years or see you reassigned to grain counting. In the marshes. You straighten your robe, adjust your sash, and polish your stylus on your sleeve. You light incense near the front entrance, frankincense, if the label is correct, or possibly fish oil, if Shinutu grabbed the wrong jar again. Either way, it smells assertive. Just as the apprentices start placing neatly stacked example tablets along the reading benches, the doors open, and walks the royal delegation. 3 men in long woolen robes, a woman in golden braids and ink-stained hands, clearly a scribe, and one elderly man with eyebrows, like startled caterpillars. You bow deeply, the apprentices attempted, causing a near collision with a display table. You pretend not to notice. The lead delegate, the one with the caterpillar brows, gestures toward the racks of tablets. "So, show us the system. Not catalog or archive, just system. As if it's some strange animal in a pen." You breathe deeply and begin. "This," you say, gesturing to the first shelf, "is the index wall. Tablets are arranged first by subject law, trade, literature, then by type, contract, receipt, epic prayer. Each is marked with a corner seal indicating origin and temple batch. You pull one tablet free with a flourish. For example, this goat census from Nipper is marked with both a batch number and a temple seal. You flip it around to show the stamp, a crescent moon with a tiny goat silhouette. The goat is, you admit, more blob than animal, but the meaning is clear. The royal scribe leans in. You keep cross-referenced indexes. You nod. 3. 1 clay, 1 wax scroll, 1 oral. In case the wax melts and the clay cracks, you say? She smiles. You're winning her over. Kadashman silently drops a tablet behind you. You ignore it with professional grace. You lead them to the central mat, where your prize collection sits: the epic tablets, the star charts, the correspondence drawer. The old man squints at a small prayer tablet and mutters, "This is Old Akkadian." "Yes," you say. "A temple hymn to Ninhursag, goddess of the sacred mountain and creator of plants." Useful. You're not sure if he's being sarcastic or devout. You continue the tour, highlighting the dream archive. The disputed oaths corner, even the cursed ledger you've refused to touch since last autumn. The one that once mysteriously reordered itself overnight. You don't open it, you just gesture respectfully. Then comes your trump card. You walk over to a low drawer, open it slowly, and withdraw a tablet wrapped in fine linen. You unwrap it with care. You say is the earliest known copy of the Flood Tale from Eridu. It predates the standard Gilgamesh version by 2 generations. You hold it like a sleeping infant. The room stills. Caterpillar brows inhales sharply. Authentic. You nod. With unique phrasing not found in later versions, you recite a line. The water rose not like rain, but like forgetting. The golden-haired scribe closes her eyes for a moment. When she opens them, she smiles faintly. "Preserve that one," she says. "You already have." Twice. Quirky tidbit. Babylonian scribes often made multiple copies of precious stories, not just to preserve the text, but to experiment with phrasing. Some tablets include side notes like, "Try the sky-wept fire instead." Essentially, ancient editor's marks. The delegation asks a few final questions. You answer them with the calm of someone running entirely on adrenaline and barley tea. You can feel Shinutu silently miming each word behind you, probably for comedic effect. You'll deal with him later. As they prepare to leave, the old man turns to you and says, "This library is unexpectedly competent." High praise from a man whose face looks carved from disappointment. You bow. "We do our best, honored guest." They leave. You wait until the doors close behind them before collapsing face first onto the mat. "We." "Alive," Kadashman whispers. "Barely," you reply, cheek still on the floor. Historians still debate how Babylonian scribes trained for these inspections. Some say there were formal academies with rigorous testing. Others argue it was more like your life improvised chaos held together by fear, ink, and sarcasm. But today you pulled it off. As the sun moves higher, you glance over at your little lion stamp tablet, the one you copied that dream onto. You feel a strange sense of completion. Maybe the gods are pleased. Maybe they're just impressed you didn't knock anything over. Either way, you'll take the win. It rains the next morning, thin and misty, the kind of rain that makes everything smell like damp clay and old promises. You arrive at the library late, still wrapped in your reed fiber cloak, hair damp, and stubbornly refusing to behave. The storm has made the streets soft and quiet. Even the temple goats are subdued, their bleating replaced by sulky munching beneath awnings. Inside, the library feels like a cocoon. The stone walls hold in the warmth from yesterday's sun, and the faint scent of cedar oil hangs in the air, still lingering from the royal delegation visit. Miraculously, nothing is broken. Yet, you light a lamp, settle onto the center mat, and unwrap the task for the day. Translating a newly arrived bundle of war correspondence from a city up north. You sigh. Nothing says relaxing morning like broken treaties and passive-aggressive generals. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Babylonian scribes weren't just glorified record keepers. They were interpreters, diplomats, and messengers. Official correspondence, especially between city-states, was often filled with coded language, metaphor, and even riddles.
Ow.
One poorly chosen phrase could cause offense, or worse, war. You crack open the first clay envelope and skim. Tell the Lion of Ison that our spears sleep. But should the wind rise, they will wake. Right, so that means we're not attacking you, lest we feel like it. The second letter is even worse. A formal complaint. Your last shipment of axes was late. We received 2, both bent. We assume this was not an omen. You stifle a laugh. War, but make it passive-aggressive. You assign the translation work to Enot, who has already settled into her corner like a quiet storm. Shanutu and Kadashman are tasked with back-sorting last week's inventory, which currently resembles a toddler's art project made entirely of broken tablets and scribbled threats. You notice something while translating a particularly snarky letter from a boarder. Commander, a symbol etched subtly into the edge. It's not part of the formal cuneiform script. It's a bird. No, a stylized quill, curved and feathered. You've seen that mark before. You dig into the drawer labeled Unknown Hands, and there it is again. Another tablet holder, poetic in tone, but with the same quill mark in the corner. The mystery deepens. Here's your quirky tidbit of the day. There were rogue scribes in Babylon, highly skilled individuals who wrote, copied or altered records outside of temple supervision. Sometimes they were poets, sometimes spies, sometimes just eccentric record lovers, with too many opinions and too little supervision. You make a mental note to start a new drawer. Possible rogue scribe sightings. You let the apprentices carry on with their controlled chaos, while you climb the ladder to the attic archiva, dusty, half-forgotten space that smells of lamp oil, bat feathers, and philosophical despair. This is where the truly strange things live. You pass the cursed accounting scrolls, the double-engraved omen tablets, and the infamous list of things not to eat, which includes both raw pomegranate and anything offered to you by a man named Eridu. You reach the back shelf and find what you, Ray, looking for. A battered ledger marked correspondences not meant to be read, which, of course, is why you're reading them. Inside are a dozen clay letters, all bearing the same stylized quill. The handwriting is elegant, too elegant. Lines curve like wind in the reeds. One begins. To the one who keeps the words, I walk behind your thoughts. Each night I dream your dreams. You read on. Are not love letters. Not exactly. More like meditations, observations, notes from someone watching the world through your eyes. Or someone like you. The final line on the last tablet makes your breath catch. When the stars forget their names, the scribes must whisper them back. You sit in silence for a long moment, the rain tapping gently at the walls. You wrap the letters carefully and tuck them into a fresh linen cloth. They belong in a new category now. Echoes. Historians still argue whether these hidden correspondences were fragments of ancient literature, parts of some lost spiritual tradition, or simply one scribe's quiet rebellion against structure. You don't know. It's good, but it makes you feel less alone. You descend the ladder to find that Kadashman has accidentally reorganized the grain tallies alphabetically by donkey name. It's something. You set him to rewriting them, while you and Shanuta go over the temple's annual report draft. It's bloated, repetitive, and full of vague statements like, all is well with the roof. Probably. You redraft the entire section. You decide not to mention the attic bats. If the vizier hasn't noticed yet, there's no need to start. By dusk, the rain has softened to mist. You apprentices pack up their styluses and mutter goodbyes. Even Enot offers a nod. High praise. You stay behind. You light a final lamp. You take out the tablet with the stylized quill. You copy one line into a fresh piece of clay. Each night, I dream your dreams. You press your lion's stamp into the corner. It's just in case someone, somewhere, is still listening. The next morning arrives with the strange golden stillness that only comes after a long rain. The streets glisten like polished stone, puddles mirroring the ziggurat's towering reflection. Even the goats walk quietly today, as if unwilling to ruin the serenity. You clutch your breakfast, a slightly overcooked honey cake and a cup of barley water, and make your way to the library. Inside, the air feels softer. Damp clay always carries a smell like warm bread and dust, earthy and comforting. Breathe it in and smile. It smells like work. Before the apprentices arrive, you take a quiet inventory of the more delicate shelves. Rain and clay don't always get along, but the sealant on the outer walls has held, and not a single tablet has melted into ancient porridge. A miracle, or at least proof that your preventative maintenance was worth every eyebrow raise from the temple accountant. You return to your desk and unroll the wax scroll you've been building slowly, a private index. Your personal labyrinth of cross-references, favorite lines, oddities, and things that simply felt important. You add a new entry under echoes. Quill-marked tablets, possibly linked to rogue scribal tradition. Check against early Sipper hymns and oracular, fragment C17. Mainstream historical fact of the morning, Babylonian scribes often kept private logs or shadow indexes beyond the official catalogs. These informal systems let them track cultural patterns, linguistic shifts, and sometimes things that were never meant to be formally recorded. You make a note to begin comparing language patterns between the dream tablets and the quill letters. The similarities are subtle shared metaphors, repetitive rhythms, but they could suggest a common author, or school, secret scribal society. Quirky tidbit. At least one surviving Babylonian tablet includes a line that reads, "If found, please return to the scribe who smells of ink." You've always felt seen by that. The apprentices arrive with slightly less chaos today. Maybe the rain rinsed some of the nonsense from their systems. Shanutu has brought his own cup of barley tea and looks almost responsible. Kadashman is carrying an actual stack of tablets without tripping. Kanat is already sitting at her mat, copying a flood myth with the focus of a starved cat eyeing a mouse. Today's task? Myth comparisons. You're working on a request from a scholar in Farof Elam, asking for transcriptions of Babylonian myths that reference divine trickery, a delightfully vague request. You pull the standard version of Enki in the World Order from the archive and read the opening lines aloud to your team. When Enki, Lord of Wisdom, set the boundaries of land and sea. Then you ask the question that always sparks chaos. What's missing? A brief pause. Kadashman, eager. There's no mention of goats. Not incorrect, you admit, but I meant narratively. What's missing from the version we tell now that may be an older one preserved? Enot raises her hand without looking up.
Enki lies.
You blink. What? In the Sipper version, she says, he says he gives gifts to all cities equally. But then the version from Mari shows he skips Ishnana. You flip through the relevant tablets. She's right. The Ishnana exception, as you now dub it. Historians still argue whether this discrepancy reflects scribal error, political revision, or simply divine favoritism. But you lean toward a different answer. Stories are like rivers. They change course, sometimes deliberately. You begin sketching a new chart on a wax board, columns for cities, divine favors, missing lines, and editorial tone. Kadashman is sent to find a damaged tablet from your ambiguous Flood Tales drawer. Shnutu fetches reed pens. Enot pulls 3 comparative myths from the unfiled, possibly satirical shelf. The hours drift past like quiet oxen. The rain returns around midday, whispering against the roof tiles. While the others work, you find yourself drawn again to the rogue scribe's handwriting. You compare it to an old poem about the goddess Inanna, only to find 3 identical phrasings. And there it is, on the side of one fragment, barely legible in faded ink. The quill mark. This rogue isn't just a romantic or philosopher. They were editing the myths. The thought sends a ripple through you. Someone, long before you, rewriting the stories, not for power, not for the temple, but for something else. Balance, perhaps, or truth, or beauty. You don't know their name. But the echo of their choices is everywhere, like wind shaping stone. You call over Yune and show her the mark. She leans in. Do you think there are more? Yes. You say, I think there are hundreds. Together, you begin pulling out tablets with unusual phrasing, marked edits, layered metaphors. A new project is born. Not temple work, not royal duty, just curiosity and love for the words. You rename a drawer. Echo Library. No one orders this. No one funds it. But sometimes the most important things start this way quietly, under the sound of rain. Between those who see what others don't, as night falls, the others leave. But you remain at your desk, candle low, stylus in hand. You copy one more line onto a fresh tablet, let the stories twist like rivers, let the scribes remember the bends. You press your lion seal gently in the corner, like a quiet rebellion in clay. It's nearly the end of the month, and the city hums with a subtle, nervous energy. Merchants tallied their ledgers in the open air, murmuring curses and half-remembered prayers. Farmers bargain for storage space before the grain goes musty. Even the temple pigeons seem jumpier than usual, perhaps sensing what you already know. Audit season is coming. You wake early, hands already aching in anticipation of the week ahead. There's something about temple audits that makes even the most innocent clay tablet look guilty. You stretch, splash your face with cold water, and sigh. Then you do what every reasonable scribe does when threatened by a royal accountant. You begin hiding things. Not fraud. No, just things they wouldn't understand. The duplicate copies, the emotionally unstable flood oaths, the tablet about the goose that sued a priest, those get quietly relocated to the deep shelves. You've labeled the drawer misc and probably cursed. Mainstream historical fact. Ancient Babylonian audits were real, rigorous, and occasionally ruinous. Priests and scribes were expected to account for all inventory, including livestock, ink, styluses, and yes, even the number of broken tablets in circulation. The penalties for mismanagement ranged from demotion to reassignment to jobs like latrine read tally clerk. No one wants that. You assemble your apprentices and give the speech. Today we prepare. Not for war, not for ceremony, but for the unblinking stare of bureaucracy. Shinutu raises his hand. What if I, hypothetically, misplace 3 census tablets and 1 receipt for oxwax? You're sorting goats until the next flood? He salutes. Kadashman sighs heavily. Enoch just rolls her eyes and starts polishing the tablet cases. You divide tasks. Cross-checking the lending shelf. Verifying the math scrolls, and most painfully sorting the unusual items cabinet. That's the one containing the stylus carved from crocodile bone. The tablet with no writing but a single drawing of a very angry-looking fish, and an object labeled simply, "Do not open." Quirky tidbit of the day: Babylonian temples sometimes cataloged items simply because they were afraid not to. Superstitions ran deep. One famous record from yore includes the line, "Item unknown, left behind by a man who disappeared. We do not touch." You seal off a few of the more problematic shelves with linen and place a fresh tablet reading. Under restoration, no access without divine authorization. A helpful lie. As the sun rises higher, the junior priest assigned to pre-audit prep arrives. He's 17, smells faintly of fig paste, and looks like he's never spoken to a tablet in his life. Here to verify the scribe's clay count, he says, holding up a read checklist. You smile gently. Of course, right this way. You show him the cleanest shelf first rows of neatly labeled math tablets. He checks 3 nods, then asks, "And how do you determine numerical certainty in your indexes?" You reply, "Oh, we rely on the 5th harmonic calculation cycle." He blinks. Writes nothing. You're 80% sure he didn't understand a word, which is perfect. He asks to examine the inkstone records. You hand him a box of wax scrolls and walk away. Enoch finds you an hour later, quietly laughing. Enoch has asked Kadashimon what a sacred smudge pattern is. Enoch is learning. You reply solemnly. By midday, the checklist is mostly full entirely due to polite deception, creative shelving, and your apprentice's ability to look earnest while hiding 5 irregular items in their sleeves. Historians still argue whether scribes like you were complicit in temple power structures or subversive caretakers of forgotten truths. You suspect the answer is yes. The worst of it over, you permit a small reward. You pull out the dream tablets, some marked, some blank hand. Gather your apprentices. Tonight you say we read the dreams. Shnutu looks horrified. Even the one about the donkey and sandals? Especially that one. You each take turns reading dreams aloud, softly, like prayers or bedtime stories. The sky outside turns from gold to deep blue. The library glows with lamplight and laughter. One dream speaks of a fish who walks upright and demands justice. Another, of a mountain that sings when kissed by lightning. One particularly strange one ends with, "Then my grandmother turned into barley. I woke up hungry." You all agree that one's oddly profound. As night deepens, the laughter fades. The dreams soften. One by one, the apprentices drift to sleep. Shinutu curled behind a shelf. Kadashman snoring into a clay pillow. Enoch still writing, eyelids drooping. You tuck a fresh tablet into the Echo library drawer, whispering as you press the seal. Let those who seek find echoes. Then you sit beside the old incense brazier, watching the shadows dance on the walls. Above, the stars blink quietly. And somewhere, you imagine another scribe is doing the same, scraping clay. Copying thoughts, preserving the quiet heartbeat of a civilization. Because someone must. Because words matter. Because even in a world of temples and kings and floods and audits, there is something sacred in the slow, deliberate act of remembering. Word count. 1089. Wind down. The fire dims now. The rain has stopped, and the stone floor beneath your mat is finally cool. You lean back slowly, letting the sounds of the library, gentle snores, creaking shelves, and the occasional whisper of wind fade into a soft, rhythmic hush. You've worked. You've remembered. You've laughed and copied and preserved the smallest details of a world that might otherwise vanish. The library holds its breath with you now. Every tablet, every scratch of a stylus, every sealed dream, all of it waits in perfect stillness. You stretch your arms across the mat, blink once. Twice, your breath slows. The lamplight flickers a little lower, and you remember just before sleep takes you that even in the smallest moments, you have mattered. Quietly, stubbornly, beautifully, you pressed stories into clay. You named the stars when they forgot themselves. And now you rest. Let the walls hold you. Let the stories hum you to sleep. Let your dreams drift gently, like floating tablets on a slow, wide river. Sleep, scribe. Sleep.